Sometime in the next 24 hours, you're going to drink something you didn't watch being poured. In 1955, in San Francisco, that was all it took for your own government to run an experiment on you. No consent form, no warning, no follow-up. Just a stranger, a cocktail, and a man watching from behind a mirror. Everything you're about to hear is a documented federal program. Every name, every dollar, every receipt is real. And by the end, it will change how you hear the words conspiracy theory, because this conspiracy came with paperwork. This is Operation Midnight Climax, April 13th, 1953, CIA Headquarters, Washington. Director Alan Dulles signs a project into existence with one word at the top, MKUltra. Its mission, in writing, learn to control the human mind, truth serums, brainwashing, chemical interrogation. The man put in charge is a 34-year-old chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. MKUltra will grow to 149 separate sub-projects inside more than 80 American institutions, including 44 universities. Now put yourself there. It's 1955. You're at a bar in San Francisco after work. A friendly stranger starts a conversation. She laughs at your jokes. She buys the next round. The drink is free. The company is pleasant. There is no reason on earth to say no. So, do you take the drink? Before you answer, meet the man who already decided for you. Sidney Gottlieb, quiet, brilliant, utterly convinced the Soviets are ahead in mind control and America must catch up at any cost. This is a real detail. Gottlieb drank goat's milk daily and spent his weekends folk dancing. The architect of America's mind control program was, by every account, a gentle eccentric. And in 1955, the gentle eccentric had a problem. Laboratory tests weren't realistic enough. He needed to test drugs on people who didn't know they were being tested. Here's what you didn't know at the start of this video. The CIA's solution wasn't a lab, a hospital, or a prison. It was an apartment, decorated like a bordello, staffed by sex workers on the federal payroll. The CIA ran it for a decade, paid for it with your grandparents' tax dollars, filed expense reports on it, and the name typed on the official government paperwork by a federal employee reviewed and approved was Operation Midnight Climax, which raises the obvious question, the one this whole story turns on. Who on earth did the CIA trust to run a government brothel? Meet George Hunter White, federal narcotics agent, 200 pounds, shaved head, a legend for kicking down doors, and a man who, colleagues said, enjoyed his work a little too much. In 1953, Gottlieb hires him moonlighting from the Bureau of Narcotics and gives him a CIA alias, Morgan Hall. White's first safe house opens at 81 Bedford Street in Greenwich Village, New York. The concept is simple. Lure people in, dose their drinks with LSD, watch what happens. Nobody follows up with the subjects afterward. Nobody checks if they got home. Nobody even records most of their names. In 1955, the operation moves west into an apartment at 225 Chestnut Street on San Francisco's Telegraph Hill. And this is where the federal government's interior decorating budget gets involved. White furnishes it with red curtains, cabaret posters, and photographs of can-can dancers, then bills it all to the Central Intelligence Agency. The women he hires are San Francisco sex workers, paid up to $100 a night, plus something more valuable, a phone number that made arrests disappear. Their job, meet men in North Beach bars, bring them back to Chestnut Street, and hand them a drink already prepared. The men have no idea, not about the drug, not about the agency, not about the mirror, because on the other side of that two-way mirror sits George Hunter White, on a portable toilet, drinking martinis by the pitcher. That is not a joke I wrote. That is the documented observation setup of a United States federal surveillance operation. Session after session, year after year, White watches drugged strangers through the glass and scribbles notes, while the CIA's finance office processes his liquor receipts. And what exactly is the agency learning from all this? According to the files that survived, how LSD affects unsuspecting people and how targets behave around sex. Could a stranger get secrets out of a man in a compromised position? Some of the men have terrifying trips and check themselves into hospitals, describing hallucinations no doctor can explain. The doctor's conclusion? Psychotic break. Next patient. Think about that mechanism. The experiment came with a built-in cover story. The victims sounded insane. Now, the buried part of this story. the part the official record smoothed over for 22 years. In November 1953, before the safe houses even hit their stride, Gottlieb's team dosed one of their own, an Army scientist named Frank Olson, at a work retreat at Deep Creek Lake, Maryland. Without his knowledge, Olson unravels over the following days. 9 days after the dosing, November 28, 1953, he goes through a 13th floor window of the Hotel Statler in New York. His family is told he fell or jumped, a tragic workplace death. That is the entire story they get. They will not learn about this LSD for 22 years, until 1975, when the Church Committee prized the truth out of the agency, and President Ford personally apologizes to the Olsons in the Oval Office. The government settles with the family for $750,000, and when Olson's body is exhumed in 1994, forensic scientist James Starrs reports skull trauma he calls consistent with a blow before the fall. To this day, the death is officially unresolved. Keep that in your pocket as you judge everything else this program touched, because back in San Francisco, the safe house keeps pouring drinks. 1957, 1959, 1961. Nobody stops it, nobody inspects it, until 1963, when one man from the CIA's own Inspector General's office finally shows up with a clipboard and starts asking what exactly is going on in this apartment. What he writes in his report should have ended everything. It didn't, and the reason it didn't is worse than the program itself. The auditor's name is John Ehrman, and his 1963 report says the quiet part in writing. The program puts the rights and lives of unknowing American citizens at risk, and many of its own staff find the work distasteful. This is the moment history could have turned. Ehrman recommends shutting down the unwitting testing, full stop. On paper, inside the CIA, in 1963, leadership's response: the testing is too valuable. The program gets a pause, a shrug, and then the safe houses keep operating. San Francisco until 1965, New York until 1966. So the men kept drinking, the Mirror kept watching, and George White kept billing the martinis. But it gets worse, because when this program finally died, the CIA's real skill was revealed, and it was never chemistry. January 1973, Watergate is closing in, and CIA Director Richard Helms gives an order that should be impossible in a democracy: destroy the MKUltra files, all of them. 20 years of human experimentation, 149 subprojects, 80-plus institutions, into the furnace. Names of victims gone, results gone, accountability gone. And it almost worked. When the Church Committee starts digging in 1975, the agency can honestly say, we'd love to help, but the records don't exist. Almost, because bureaucracy has one unbreakable law: accounting never dies. In 1977, journalist John Marks files a Freedom of Information request, and the CIA discovers that roughly 20,000 pages of MKUltra documents survived the purge because they were misfiled in the budget office. Read that again. We know about a secret human experimentation program because someone forgot to tell the accountants. The surviving pages detonate. August 3, 1977, Senator Ted Kennedy hauls the CIA before the Senate, and Operation Midnight Climax goes from rumor to congressional record. Imagine being the staffer who has to read the words Midnight Climax aloud into the official record of the United States Senate. The hearings confirm the safe houses, the unwitting dosing, the sex workers on the payroll, the destroyed files, all of it. And the men who ran it? Sidney Gottlieb retires quietly in 1973, the same year the files burn, and spends his later years volunteering at a hospice, still folk dancing. He is never charged with anything. Not for Olson, not for the safe houses, not for any of the 149 subprojects. George Hunter White retires before the scandal breaks and dies in 1975, missing his own exposure by 2 years. But White leaves behind a confession the hearings never could have extracted, a private letter to Gottlieb, written in 1971, summing up his career in one sentence. He writes that he'd had fun, and asks where else a red-blooded American boy could lie, cheat, and steal with what he called the sanction and blessing of the All-Highest. That's the operator of your government's safe house program, in his own words, describing your government as a license. Congress responds the way institutions respond. New oversight rules, a 1976 presidential order restricting human experimentation, stern press conferences. Victims respond differently, because how do you even find out you were a victim? There's no list. The list was shredded. Thousands of people spent the 60s carrying memories of one inexplicable, terrifying night, a night their doctors called a breakdown, their families called drinking, and their own minds couldn't explain. Some of them, surely, eventually heard the 1977 hearings on the radio and felt the floor move. It was real. It was them. It was the government. And here's the poison that outlived the program. For every real victim, the hearings also validated every future person who claims the government is in their drink, their phone, their walls. MKUltra didn't just harm its subjects, it broke the public's ability to tell paranoia from history, permanently. Which brings us to the only question left, the one the CIA never wanted asked, because the answer embarrasses them more than the toilet does. After 10 years, tens of millions of dollars, and thousands of unwitting subjects, did any of it actually work? No. No truth serum, no brainwashing formula, no obedience switch. The CIA's own conclusion in the surviving files is that LSD was too unpredictable to control anyone. Every drink, every mirror, every ruined night, every Frank Olson, for a program that produced, by its own accounting, nothing it set out to find. But it did produce something the CIA never wrote down, because they demonstrated it instead. For 22 years, the truth about this program was available to anyone who said it out loud. Victims said it, in hospitals, to police, to their own families. Every single one of them was dismissed, not because the evidence was hidden, but because the claim itself sounded crazy. The perfect cover-up was never the shredder. It was the story being unbelievable. The CIA spent 10 years trying to learn how to control your mind, and only proved they never needed to, because the truth protects itself by sounding insane. That's the actual discovery of Operation Midnight Climax, not chemistry, camouflage. And once you see that mechanism, you can't unsee it, because it never retired. Think about the last time you heard a true, documented story and felt your eyes roll, felt yourself think, that sounds like a conspiracy theory. That reflex feels like intelligence, like skepticism. It's the exact defense mechanism this program hid behind for 22 years, running in your head right now for free. And if you think unwitting experiments ended in 1965, in June 2014, Facebook published a study in a major scientific journal showing it had quietly manipulated the news feeds of 689,000 users to alter their emotions. No consent form. Sound familiar? Nobody needed a safe house this time. You carried the two-way mirror into your own bedroom, and you agreed to the terms. 60 years ago, they had to pour the drink. Now the glass refills itself every time you unlock it. So no, the story was never really about LSD or safe houses or even the CIA. It's about the fact that somewhere in San Francisco, for 10 years, this was a taxpayer-funded federal workstation, a federal agent on a portable toilet, behind a two-way mirror, martini pitcher in one hand, government notepad in the other, watching Americans he drugged and saluting the flag on your dime. And when the victims told the truth about that image, the world called them crazy for 2 decades. Which brings us back to the bar. 1955, the friendly stranger, the free drink. I asked you at the start, do you take it? Here's why that question stings differently now. You already answered it. Not in 1955, this morning. Every account you signed into, every I agree you didn't read, every feed you let decide your mood. The experiment doesn't need your ignorance anymore. It has your signature. If this story rearranged something in your head, subscribe. Next time we cover the psychology experiments your textbook skipped, and I promise the receipts are just as real, because the wildest part of Operation Midnight Climax was never the safe house. The paranoids weren't crazy, they were early.